Hey, how's it going? Bill Lethman here for Money Evolution. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about your 8 most important birthdays as it relates to your planning for retirement. And we're going to be helping you to do something that I call the retirement planning timeline and mapping out each one of these birthdays and understanding what happens at each one of those dates and what are the strategies and the things that you should be thinking about as it relates to your plans for retirement. But real quick, before I get into the content of today's video, if you're watching this and you want to learn more about what we do at Money Evolution, you can head over to our website, moneyevolution.com. You can learn about our financial planning that we do there. And we also have something we created called the Ultimate Retirement Planning Checklist. And it's a list of every single thing that you can think of as it relates to getting ready for retirement to make sure that you don't miss anything. We'll put a link to all of that stuff down in the description below. Okay, so let's jump in here. Again, we're going to be talking about and mapping out these 8 critical dates and ages that you're going to want to think about as you go into doing some of your retirement planning. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw out our retirement planning timeline. And this is going to be something that's going to give us a visual so we can see all of this as it kind of lays out for your individual situation. And if you're married, especially if your spouse is maybe a couple years different in age, you're going to want to put their key ages on here as well and be thinking about all of those different strategies that are going to pertain to what happens at those ages. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is age 59 and a half. And I think that's something that most people are probably familiar with, and that's the age when you can start taking withdrawals and distributions from your retirement accounts without having that normal 10% penalty that would apply to an early premature withdrawal. And so again, that's going to depend on when you retire, if that's even going to be a factor or not, but that's definitely something to think about. That's when those retirement dollars are going to start to become accessible. The second age that we want to put on here is age 55. And this is something that's maybe not quite as widely known as the 59 and a half rule, but age 55 is a key age where you can start taking penalty-free withdrawals from your company-sponsored retirement accounts, like a 401k plan. And this is going to pertain, particularly, you have to, in order to qualify for this rule, separate service or retire in the year you turn 55 or later. And it allows you to take those penalty-free withdrawals if you're over age 55, but you're not yet 59 and a half. So that's where you can have that age 55. And so we're going to say 401k withdrawals is going to be the thing that we can do here, and then we're going to want to think about. So if you're planning on retiring before 59 and a half, that's something that definitely could apply. Something that I'm not going to get into here, but another option, if you don't have the age 55 rule available, is you could do something called the 72T, which allows you to take penalty-free withdrawals from an IRA account as long as they are considered what the IRS calls substantially equal payments. And those payments would have to continue for the greater of either 5 years or until you turn 59 and a half, whichever is longer there. So 55, 59 and a half, and then 62, some of you may know, is the earliest age that you're able to collect Social Security benefits. But if you take Social Security benefits at age 62, they're going to be reduced by about 35%. But that's something that at least you can start to consider and see how it works into your cash flow situation and what your longevity is and the break-even points and all of that. Again, this isn't a video about Social Security benefits, but 62 would be the earliest age that you could begin collecting those Social Security benefits, but it would be at a reduced amount. And again, if you're married, your spouse may turn 62 a couple years before you or a couple years after you, or it may be a bigger age gap there, but you can start to map this out. And if it's determined that you want to take Social Security at age 62, you could start writing some numbers on here. And you can say, okay, if I take Social Security early at 62, maybe I'm going to have $25,000 that's going to be coming in. And so that's going to go into building out your cash flow map as well. Maybe your spouse turns 62 a couple years later, and if they're going to take it, maybe they're going to get, maybe it's going to be about $18,000 in Social Security benefits, whatever that may be. Your numbers may be higher or lower, but you kind of hopefully get the idea there. We'll just put spouse age 62 there. The next key age that we're going to talk about is age 65. And I think think this is a big one. So this is the age when you become Medicare eligible. And again, if you're retiring before age 65, I think this is a really big deal because more than likely, if you have to go out into the exchanges under the Affordable Care Act, if you don't have some type of employer-sponsored retirement health care option, you're probably going to have a lot higher health care expenses if you retire before age 65. Once you go on Medicare, those costs tend to go down a little bit. So again, as you're mapping out your cash flow, you may say, hey, if we take the Affordable Care Act healthcare, we might have as much as maybe $24,000 of expense in those years before Medicare kicks in, but maybe once Medicare kicks in, that expense drops in half to maybe about $12,000 a year. And that's roughly about what we put in our financial plans as we're doing estimates for clients there, unless you're going to get a ACA subsidy or something like that. And of course, there's inflation. This stuff's all going to get more expensive in the future, but hopefully you get the idea there. So 65 is going to be where Medicare kicks in. And then for most people, your full retirement age for Social Security is probably going to be age 67. It could be a little bit less than that. It could be 66 in some months if you were, depending on what year you were born and things. But for most people, age 67 is going to be when you can take and collect unreduced Social Security benefits, FRA, that stands for full retirement age. And that's more than likely for, I would say, the vast majority of our clients. That seems to be the optimal time to collect Social Security. It's the best balance of taking it early versus delaying Social Security. I think full retirement age is a good rule of thumb, just to kind of put that in there as a placeholder, at least in the early stages of your retirement planning and everything. The next age would be 70. And for those of you that may be thinking about delaying Social Security, you probably know that you're going to get an 8% increase to your Social Security benefit for every year that you delay past your full retirement age. And it maxes out at age 70. So 70 would be max Social Security benefit. So you might even put this on the timeline, and just to kind of get that visual, especially if you're building out a spreadsheet or you're doing some financial planning, you can put in, okay, here's what my Social Security benefit would be if I took it early at age 62. Here's what it looks like at full retirement age, and this is what it looks like if I wait to age 70. And again, there is going to be a trade-off with that. We'll do other videos, and we have done other videos on Social Security, but delaying, of course, gives you more money, but you also have fewer years that you're going to end up collecting Social Security. So there's going to be sort of a break-even in there. And it also is something, not just the break-even point that matters, but it also matters what it's doing to the rest of your cash flow. So for some people, even though they may technically max out their Social Security benefits by delaying Social Security, it actually puts such a negative strain on their portfolio assets in the early part of retirement that in many cases, or some cases, it would be better for them to actually collect that Social Security benefit early there. So you're going to want to put that on there and have that as a reference so you can see what that does. The next age we're going to come to is going to be running on a room on my board here, 73 and 75. And this is going to be sort of an either or. This is going to be where your RMDs or your required minimum distributions kick in, and it's going to depend on what year you were born. If you were born before 1960, your RMD age is going to be 73, but if you were born 1960 or later, that's going to be age 75. And this is where you basically, the IRS says you've gone long enough without paying any taxes on these traditional retirement accounts, IRAs and 401ks and 403bs. Now you have to start taking some of that money out. They're going to force you, based on a formula, to take a little bit out of that retirement account every year. This is something I think I just did a video about maybe last week or a couple weeks ago, depending on when you're watching this, where I talk about that. I talk about that money that you have in those traditional retirement accounts, and is that potentially going to grow to an amount that could cause your RMDs to push you up into a higher tax bracket later in life. We want to know this in advance. We want to know if that RMD is going to be an issue. So that's a big part of our retirement planning and really putting together a tax optimized strategy for this. So RMD is going to be that. And then probably I'm going to give you one more, so I think that's 8 altogether. But the most important date on here that you're going to want to put, and I'm actually going to change my pencil over to red, is going to be whatever your retirement date is. And that's going to be critical. And then as you build out your timeline and you build out your cash flows, you're going to want to see what does that income look like before retirement? What does it look like in the early stages of retirement, especially if you're going to retire before maybe Social Security is even eligible, or if you're going to delay taking Social Security, you may have some bigger gaps. You may have a pension, and we could put that on here too. That may be an extra bonus one I'm just thinking of right now. So you may have a pension that kicks in at a certain age. Maybe it starts right away when you retire. That seems to be probably the most common. However, for many people, they may retire at 58 or 60, but there may be an advantage to waiting until 62 or 65 because that pension benefit's going to continue to grow. Even though they're not working anymore, it'll grow for a little bit, and that's something that becomes a math equation. We put it into the financial planning software, run some calculations on that, and see, does it make sense to take that early, or does it make sense to delay that? That's a similar situation or calculation that we would do for Social Security benefits. You're going to want to put a pension on here. And of course, maybe your spouse is retiring at a different age. Maybe your spouse retires over here at 62, and you're going to want to put that in there. So it's all going to be sort of this map, but the key ages, again, when you can start accessing those retirement accounts, if it's a company-sponsored plan at age 55, using the age 55 rule, 59 and a half, normal distributions from retirement accounts without penalty, then Social Security, Medicare, and your RMDs put all on the chart here. So anyway, we actually have some great resources. If you go over to moneyevolution.com, I think we actually have one of these retirement planning timelines that you might be able to access there and get a PDF of that, so it just makes it a little bit easier for you to kind of follow along. We also have our retirement launchpad, which is a set of worksheets that really helps you to get organized for retirement, especially if you're in the early stages of putting together ideas for your retirement, to get all of your assets organized, figure out your income in retirement, and really kind of just go through a little bit of that checklist and everything. So we'll put links to all of that stuff down in the description below, and look forward to seeing you back in our next videos. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and we'll see you later. Thanks.